When I discovered a photo that shouldn't exist, my world stopped spinning. There she was, my wife of 7 years, locked in an embrace with a man I'd never seen before. I found it buried in Sarah's cloud backup while fixing her laptop. She'd forgotten to delete it from the server. The timestamp read 3:27 p.m. on a Tuesday. The same Tuesday she'd told me she was working late on an urgent project. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling over the keyboard. Another photo loaded, then another, each one more intimate than the last. I closed my eyes, but the images were already burned into my memory. Sarah, with her dark hair falling across her bare shoulders, smiling up at this stranger with an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The location data embedded in the photos pointed to the Westlake Hotel just 3 blocks from her office. Just 3 blocks from where I'd waited in the parking lot one night, bringing her dinner as a surprise because she was working so hard. That night, she'd texted me not to come, said she was in the middle of something. I remembered sitting there, the food growing cold beside me before finally driving home. As an IT security specialist, I knew better than most how easy it is to destroy someone digitally. All it would take was a few keystrokes, passwords changed, accounts locked, personal information leaked. But that's not who I was, or at least, that's not who I had been until that moment. I took a deep breath and began to type. The man in the photos I discovered through a reverse image search was Eric Townsend, vice president of marketing at my wife's company, married with 2 children, a rising star in the industry. My fingers moved faster, pulling up every detail of his life I could find. His address in the suburbs, his wife's name Catherine, his children's school, the charity boards he sat on, his social media accounts, carefully curated to present the image of the perfect family man. I looked back at the photos of him with my wife, and something cold settled in my chest. "Fine," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's play." 2 days later, I sat across from Sarah at our dining table, watching her eat the pasta I'd prepared. She twirled spaghetti around her fork, completely unaware that her world was about to unravel. "How was work?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Busy," she said without looking up. "That merger is taking up all our time. Eric's been pushing everyone to the limit." "Eric," I said, "that's your marketing VP, right?" She nodded, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth for just a fraction of a second. "Anyone else might have missed it, I didn't. You've mentioned him before," I continued. "Seems like a smart guy." "He is," she took a sip of wine. "Brilliant, actually. The board loves him." "I'd like to meet him sometime," I said, smiling. "Maybe we could have him and his wife over for dinner." The wine glass froze at her lips. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said carefully. "We don't really socialize with executives outside of company functions." "That's a shame," I replied, still smiling. "I'm sure Catherine would love to meet you." I watched the color drain from her face. "How do you know his wife's name?" "LinkedIn," I lied smoothly. "I looked him up. I was curious about the man my wife spends so much time with." Her laugh was nervous. "That's a little weird, David." "Is it?" I asked, my smile never faltering. "I thought it was normal to be interested in your spouse's colleagues." She put down her fork. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I said, standing to clear my plate. "Just making conversation." As I rinsed dishes in the sink, I could feel her eyes on my back, searching for any sign that I knew more than I was letting on. But I had already made my first move, and she had no idea what was coming next. The following morning, I left for work earlier than usual. Instead of heading to my office, I parked outside the Townsend residence, a sprawling colonial in an upscale neighborhood. I watched Catherine Townsend emerge at 7:45, ushering 2 children into her Range Rover. I waited 10 minutes before Eric appeared, briefcase in hand, wearing a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He climbed into his Tesla, checked his phone, then backed out of the driveway. I followed at a distance, noting his route. He stopped at a coffee shop, the same one every day, I would later discover. He always ordered the same thing, a double espresso and a chocolate croissant. He always tipped exactly 20%. His daily routine was as predictable as it was privileged. For 2 weeks, I observed. I learned his patterns, his habits, his vulnerabilities. I watched him meet my wife for lunch on Wednesdays. I saw them brush hands across the table when they thought no one was looking. I documented everything. At night, I would return home and kiss Sarah on the cheek, ask about her day, and listen to her lies. Each one was another brick in the wall. I was building a wall that would eventually separate her from everything she thought she could get away with. Meanwhile, I set my plan in motion. Eric Townsend was about to learn that some mistakes can't be undone. Phase 1 began with a series of anonymous emails to various members of Eric's professional network. Nothing explicit, just hints and vague references that someone in his position should be more discreet. Emails sent through untraceable servers, carefully worded to plant seeds of doubt. I started switching his online orders, changing delivery addresses, altering quantities. Small things at first. A package meant for his home arriving at his office instead. Items he never ordered showing up on his doorstep. The trick was to be subtle enough that it seemed like ordinary mistakes, not targeted harassment. Then I moved on to his accounts. A subscription to an adult website charged to his corporate card. A donation to a politically controversial organization made in his name. Small amounts that wouldn't immediately raise alarms but would leave digital footprints for anyone looking closely enough. I was careful never to do anything illegal. I didn't hack into his accounts or steal his identity. I simply exploited the weaknesses in the systems he used, everyday weaknesses that most people never think about. By the third week, I could see the strain starting to show. In the parking lot of Sarah's company, I watched him argue with a delivery driver about a package he claimed he never ordered. His normally perfect hair was disheveled, his tie slightly askew. Sarah came home that night with tension lines around her mouth. "Everything okay?" I asked, looking up from my book. "Fine," she said, but her tone was clipped. "Just work stuff. Anything I can help with?" She gave me a strange look. "No, David, nothing you can help with." If only she knew. Phase 2 involved Catherine Townsend. I didn't want to hurt her. She was as much a victim in this as I was, but she deserved to know the truth. I created a new email account under a generic name and composed a message. "Catherine, I believe there are things happening that you should be aware of. Your husband has been involved with someone at his workplace. I'm not sending this to hurt you, but because I believe everyone deserves the truth. Ask him about Sarah Maxwell. Ask him about the Westlake Hotel, a concerned friend." I debated for hours before pressing send. This would escalate everything, but there was no turning back now. 2 days later, I saw the aftermath. Eric stumbled out of his house at 9:30 a.m., much later than his usual departure time. His shirt was wrinkled, his face haggard. He sat in his Tesla for almost 5 minutes before finally driving away. That evening, Sarah came home in a state I'd never seen before. Her hands shook as she poured herself a glass of wine. "What's wrong?" I asked, though I already knew. "Nothing," she snapped. "Just a difficult day. Want to talk about it?" "No," she drained the glass in one long swallow. "I'm going to take a shower." I heard her phone buzz while she was upstairs. A glance at the screen showed a message from Eric. "We need to talk. Catherine knows something. Meet tomorrow at the usual place." I deleted the message and placed her phone exactly where it had been. When she came back downstairs, I was preparing dinner as if nothing had happened. "I was thinking," I said casually, "maybe we should take a vacation soon. Get away from work for a while." She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I don't think I can get away right now." "Because of the merger?" I asked innocently. "Yes," she said, the lie coming easily to her. "The merger." I nodded sympathetically. "Another time then." Phase 3 was the most intricate and the most devastating. I began by synthesizing all the information I'd gathered. The hotel meetings. The text messages. The expense reports that Eric had filed claiming business dinners that were actually rendezvous with my wife. I compiled everything into a neat, comprehensive file. Then I created a simple website. The URL was Eric's full name. The content was minimal, just a countdown timer set to expire during the company's annual charity gala, which was happening in 1 week. Below the timer were the words, "The truth is coming." I sent the link to Eric from another anonymous email account. Within an hour, he had viewed it 16 times. The next day, Catherine Townsend received a package containing printed copies of hotel receipts and a flash drive with time-stamped photos taken outside the Westlake Hotel, photos showing her husband and my wife entering and leaving together. I had been methodical in my documentation. Eric's world was crumbling, but I wasn't finished yet. 3 days before the gala, I left an envelope on the desk of Sarah's CEO. Inside was a detailed account of how the company's VP of marketing had been falsifying expense reports to cover an affair with a married colleague. Attached were copies of the reports with the actual receipts showing the discrepancies. That same day, I changed all my passwords, secured my financial accounts, and consulted a divorce attorney. Then I waited. The night of the gala arrived. Sarah had been distant all week, constantly on her phone, having hushed conversations that ended abruptly when I entered the room. She got ready in silence, slipping into a black dress I'd always loved on her. "You look beautiful," I said honestly. She gave me a distracted smile. "Thanks, we shouldn't be too late." "Take your time," I replied. "I've got some work to catch up on anyway." As soon as she left, I opened my laptop. The countdown on Eric's website had less than an hour remaining. When it hit 0, the site would update to display a single message: "Check your company email." An email that would go to every employee at Sarah's company, containing detailed evidence of Eric's financial misconduct and his affair with my wife. An email that would also be copied to the board of directors, the company's investors, and selected industry publications. I watched the minutes tick down, feeling strangely calm. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about consequences. At 9:45 p.m. my phone rang. It was Sarah. "David," she gasped, her voice barely audible over background noise. "David, I need you to come pick me up, now." "What's happened?" I asked, even though I knew. "Please," she said, and I heard the panic in her voice. "Just come." I arrived at the hotel 20 minutes later. The gala was in chaos. In the lobby, groups of people were huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. I spotted Eric being escorted out by security, his face ashen. Catherine stood nearby, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by sympathetic colleagues. Sarah was waiting outside, arms wrapped around herself despite the mild evening. When she saw me, something flickered across her face, relief mixed with fear. "Take me home," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. We drove in silence for several minutes before she spoke again. "Someone exposed everything," she said, staring out the window. "All of it. There were emails, photos. God, David, it was horrible. Eric is finished. The board asked for his resignation on the spot." "And you?" I asked quietly. She turned to look at me, her eyes searching my face. "I've been suspended pending an investigation. They're saying we misused company funds." "Did you?" Her breath caught. "What? Did you misuse company funds, Sarah?" She stared at me, realization slowly dawning. "You know," she whispered, "you've known all along." I kept my eyes on the road. "Yes." "How long?" "Long enough." Her hands began to tremble. Was it you, all of this?" I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. In the sudden silence, I could hear her shallow breathing. "Do you remember our wedding vows?" I asked instead of answering her question. "You promised to be faithful. You promised honesty. You looked me in the eyes and made those promises." "David, I had access to your cloud backup," I said, cutting her off. "You should have been more careful with your photos." She closed her eyes, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me, Sarah. Every lie, every message, every time you were with him when you said you were working, it all hurt me." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her voice small. I turned to face her fully. "I already did it." Her eyes widened as understanding hit her. "The emails, the website, everything, it was you," I nodded. "How could you do this?" she demanded, anger suddenly flaring. "You've destroyed Eric's career, his marriage." "No," I said calmly. "Eric and you did that yourselves. I just made sure there were consequences." She reached for the door handle. "I can't be here right now." "Where will you go, Sarah?" "To Eric. I don't think Catherine would appreciate that. To your parents. Are you ready to explain to them what you did? To your friends, your colleagues?" Her hand froze. "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I had time," I replied simply, "while you were with him." She slumped back against the seat, defeat written across her features. "What happens now?" I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "Divorce papers. My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow. I've already moved most of my things to a new apartment." She took the envelope with trembling fingers. "Just like that. 7 years of marriage over?" "You ended our marriage the moment you decided to lie to me," I said. "This is just making it official." We sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of everything that had happened and everything that would happen next pressing down between us. "I loved you," I said finally. "I would have done anything for you. All you had to do was be honest." "I did love you," she whispered. "I still do. It was just what? Not exciting enough, not fulfilling enough." She didn't answer. I opened my door and stepped out of the car. "Goodbye, Sarah." As I walked away, I heard her call my name, but I didn't turn around. There was nothing left to say. The digital reckoning was complete, and it had cost all of us everything. 3 months later, I sat in a coffee shop across town, laptop open in front of me. The aftermath had been as extensive as I'd anticipated. Eric had resigned in disgrace. Sarah had been terminated after the financial investigation revealed the full extent of their misconduct. The divorce was finalized with surprising efficiency. Sarah hadn't contested anything. I had moved to a modest apartment near my office and settled into a new routine. The anger that had fueled me for those weeks had faded to a dull ache that only occasionally flared up when something reminded me of her. My phone buzzed with a text message. I heard Sarah got a job offer in another state. Thought you should know. Still on for lunch tomorrow? Mike, my oldest friend, had been my rock through all of this. He'd listened without judgment when I finally told him everything I'd done. I typed back, thanks for letting me know, see you at 1. I closed my laptop and glanced around the coffee shop. At a nearby table, a woman caught my eye and smiled. I nodded politely before turning away. I wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe I never would be. Trust, once broken, is not easily rebuilt. But I was learning to live with the pieces of the life I'd had and slowly building something new from the fragments. As I stepped outside into the sunlight, I thought about Eric and Sarah and what they had lost. I thought about Catherine and her children, innocent casualties in a war they never asked to be part of. I thought about myself and the line I had crossed from victim to vigilante. Had it been worth it? I wasn't sure. Justice and vengeance often look the same from a distance but feel very different once you've experienced both. My phone buzzed again. An email notification from a familiar address, Sarah's. The subject line reads simply, "I understand now." I hovered my thumb over the delete button, then hesitated. With a deep breath, I opened it. David, I've had a lot of time to think about what happened and why I did what I did. No excuse would be sufficient, so I won't try to make any. I just wanted you to know that I understand now not just what you did, but why you did it. I'm moving to Portland next week. A fresh start, I hope. I won't contact you again after this. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. You deserved better. Sarah, I stared at the screen for a long moment before typing a brief reply. I hope you find what you're looking for, Sarah. Goodbye. I hit send, then deleted both messages. Some endings don't need epilogues. As I walked toward my car, I thought about the immense power that technology gives us, the power to connect, to create, and to destroy. Like any power, it's not inherently good or evil. It's all in how you use it. I had used it to tear down a life built on lies. Now it was time to see if I could use it to build something true.